change over there. Your laptop is down. They kind of bolted in or some kind of thing. You'll have to go pretty fast. So then we'll switch back after Mitchell. Just announcing that too. Yeah, tech roll out there. Okay. So, let's see. Okay, here's Manhattan. This is where some of us live. Some of us live in Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and Bronx. And this island was referred to by the writer E.B. White as an island fantasy. And I don't think any of us can deny that it is both an island and a fantasy. I think this picture was taken in the 20s, I'm thinking. And looking at this picture reminds me of something I read that the writer John McPhee said, that at that point anyway, the buildings in Manhattan, the environment that we live in, the built environment, the urban environment, was largely determined by geology. That the big clump of buildings down there by Wall Street, and the ones up that you can see up in Upper Midtown, a little bit on the Upper East Side and around the Upper West Side, were all built on granite outcroppings. That and so the village, for instance, the Greenwich Village and other parts of town, couldn't have tall buildings in them because the technology, the building technology at the time, wouldn't allow it. They would have clunked in or tipped over or listed to one side like the Leaning Tower of Trump. And so those never came into existence until recently, and now the building technology has enabled us to do wonderful things like build towers in every part of town. That, well, I'm being a little bit ironic here. But, so, at some point in our history, our town was determined by all kinds of forces, and one of them being geology. Okay. Half the world, that doesn't include fish, half the world of humans lives in cities. Half of those people live in slums. I'm not going to address that issue. That's another talk. Jeanette mentioned that in the United States of America, where many of us live, 80% live in what we might call metropolitan areas. So we're talking about, I forgot to mention, I'm not just talking about bicycles. We're talking about how it is we live, how we live, what are we in control of our lives, and what do we think of our lives, and all this kind of stuff. I'm going to show you, here's some books I read recently. This is one by a guy named Michael Sorkin, a former partner of Mitchell's. I read this very recently. It's about his walk to work. He lives in, I think, Greenwich Village, and he works in Tribeca, and he ruminates about the places he passes between the village and Tribeca and how they got to be what they are. Well, he kind of talks about how parts of New York not to be what they are. Another one, this is a rather well-known book. This is Jane Jacobs' book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. I don't know if I might be saying something that everybody knows. This book was very influential. It kind of went against the tide at the time. I guess this was in the 60s when the prevailing wisdom was that to invigorate and deal with the problems of cities was to, it was thought that the way to deal with poverty was to tear down the houses of poor people. And we've since, maybe we thought that a little bit. And she was the one who went up against Robert Moses. I'm assuming that a lot of people know who he is. He's someone who also shaped a lot of what New York is. She is one of the people who went up against him, along with other people, but she was a very eloquent writer and built her case very slowly and methodically. And people began to realize that, well, maybe a lot of what Moses had in mind wasn't that great. Moses did a lot of things that were good. He put a lot of our parks in and all that kind of things. But some of the things he had in mind would inevitably have been city killers, as we call them. Well, he wanted to build a highway, a super expressway connecting